Well, hello everybody. It's Vince Pennell with Real Talk again, and I'm lucky enough today to have Angela Rojas with me with Vote Fair Go, Sarah Games Party that she started about 2.5 years ago, I think, from memory, thereabouts.
Yeah, maybe.
So, in all fairness, I should let people know that I know Angela from her ventures at looking at school education and certain books that have been appearing and stuff in the libraries. She's been very, very outspoken about it. So just letting everybody know that I do know Angela. We've had some previous engagement, and she's been kind enough today to come on. So hello, Angela. How are you?
Good, Vince. How are you? Thank you for having me.
My pleasure indeed. Now, as usual, as I explained before, we've got a set of questions we'll go through. Feel free to answer what you can, ignore what you want. Well, just if you don't have an answer for one in particular, just feel free to say to the audience, hey, I don't have an answer for that or whatever. All right. Now, just give us a short summary of who you are.
Okay. I'm a mum with 3 teenage daughters. A few years ago, I was homeschooling my girls, and using the public libraries, I came across these very explicit books in our public library, and I decided to start taking action. So for a few years, I started campaigning and a petition, a paper parliament petition, and I got about 6,000 physical signatures. And throughout that process too, after speaking at events and everything and challenging one book for classification review, I also became a certified film and games classifier and assessor, which has been helping me with that process. And despite the petition hasn't been presented in Parliament yet, but last year I met with the South Australian Libraries Board directors, and they agreed to my recommendations anyway. So they're going to make changes and ensure that all books across South Australian public libraries have age-consistent shelf locations. Will ensure that the vendors send the books for classification review. So the really explicit books must seek classification. And they will look at creating an M15 young adults area in our libraries. They didn't want to put content warning on the covers, but they are considering and doing an audit of that now to see, how that would work. It doesn't put restrictions on books. I don't support the idea of book banning, but there are some books that should be in certain areas and away from young kids. But have had some success with certain books being removed because, there was a book series that was legally restricted to adults. It was on par with an adult magazine, so those ones were removed. And as far as challenging, I've been bringing awareness to the comprehensive sexuality education that's taught in schools, so the respectful relationships and some of the issues around that. And it's very, very explicit in some of the areas, and I don't believe it's age appropriate. But as a film and games classifier, I learned also very recently that at the end of last year that Shine SA is a gender clinic, a Planned Parenthood, but they also supply the government schools in South Australia those sex education materials, and they create the curriculum for the teachers, and they also teach the stuff. And what I learned was their DVDs are not classified by the Australian Classification Board. So at the end of last year, I put a recommendation for those DVDs to be sent for classification review because they're breaking the law, and they're currently under police audit, which is awesome. Really? I'm looking forward.
What was the name of the company again?
Shine SA. So
Shine. Oh, Shine.
Shine SA. So we have 3 approved third-party providers that teach all the sex education stuff, but Shine SA is the main one in South Australia. And by law, you cannot sell, hire, or borrow any DVDs because they have a teacher resource collection and public library that are unclassified. And also, even if there's educational merit for educational use, if any DVD across Australia is likely to be M-rated, it must be classified. So there's no exemption on the rule. So I've really been pushing back and working hard behind the scenes in the past 4 months, and I'm getting a breakthrough. So that's what we're really focused on. And last year, with all these speaking engagements, I've also been involved with an international child protection task force. Last year, I went to Washington, D.C., September, October, and there were 7 countries. We met with staffers from congressmen and women. We had meetings and conferences. I spoke in America First Studios. I was interviewed for Mums for America. So that gave me a lot of hope and inspiration, because what we're experiencing in South Australia and Australia-wide, it's happening internationally with a lot of things. So looking at, how different countries are doing what where. As far as Sarah Game is well aware of what I've been doing, and she supports what I've been doing, and she asked me to run.
All right, no, if you just hang on for a second, audience, I've got to pause. Somebody rang the doorbell. All right, sorry, people, I have to apologise for that. It was somebody doing my other job, which is fixing computers. So I just had to go and answer the door and pick up a computer from somebody who's dropping it off. So very, very. So obviously, I think we need to get you on for another real talk, just generally about this subject, because I have so many questions from what you just said. But anyway, I'm trying to keep everything on a straight and narrow with this.
Yes.
What was the real reason that you decided to stand for this party? Sarah
Game, in the past, she's spoke up against the what's happening in schools. That she's speaking up against the gender ideologies, some of the curriculum stuff, and she supports the idea that parents should have full control of the curriculum and transparency. She also is pro-life, and she supports the idea that faith-based schools should have faith-based teachers, and that's something that the Greens tried to get rid of, was under the anti-discrimination, was to stop, to allow anyone who's not of faith to work at a faith-based school, and that's not right. If you want your child to be of a certain faith, that the teachers and volunteers and staff should all be knowledgeable or rooted in that faith. And the other thing too, Sarah Game has put out a petition to repeal the changes made to the emergency amendments. So when Labor government gave themselves extra powers last year or the year before, she wants to repeal those changes made and take away some of those powers. So she's all in favour against the government overreach on everything. So, I suppose we align in many things politically.
Yeah, okay. And I should try to remember too, I forgot to say that it's fair go for Elizabeth. So you're actually running for the Legislative Council in Elizabeth.
Yes. So. Yes, so I'm running for the seat of Elizabeth. The party name, the full name is Sarah Games Fair Go for Australians. That's the full name. Yeah.
Nice long one for us to remember on the things when we're doing it. Okay, so power bills. Power bills keep rising in South Australia households. What's your position on renewables, and do you think the pace of the transition has pushed electricity costs too high for ordinary families?
With Fairgo, they have a policy around energy, and it more about looking into how we can use gas and other things as well. I know that like some people like the renewables and things like that, but I think we need to look at ways that energy prices have just gone way too up. I don't have a lot of the information. I'm not very good at explaining all of that, but I do know there's a policy around having more gas, or the use of more gas.
Right.
And hopefully that will reduce the pressure of, if there's a blackout, because, and things like that, and the costs, hopefully to bring those costs down. Fairgo do have a website with some policies on there. I can't give you all the details, but
Excellent. At least you're nice and honest on that. That's excellent.
yes.
No problem. All right. Cost of living pressures. South Australia's are feeling pressure right now. Power, rego, insurance, council rates. What will you actually change this term to help reduce everyday costs?
This is a good one. Sarah Game, when the first thing she wants to try to put through Parliament and negotiate, I don't know how that's going to look in details. She wants to abolish third-tier government. How that's going to work, I don't know the details. That's got to be worked out. But when we talk about housing crisis and cost of living, and there's so many factors that go into that. If we can slow down immigration to a certain level, so there's Australian citizens and permanent residents should get first choice on houses and buying houses and long-term rentals. I don't believe in foreign ownership. So, and then there's certain land release we can look at doing that needs to happen. But there is ways to have more affordable houses, but there's so many ways that we have to try to reduce the cost of living. And there are builders who can make more affordable houses. It's just the land prices and everything have gone up. But if you think about, the 70s, 80s and 90s, houses were built really well and they had less regulations and costs involved with all that. So, I think we need to get back to that, take away some of those regulations, because houses can be built really good quality. I mean, even if you wanted to subdivide, if you could, the starting point roughly is about $30,000 just to subdivide your block. That's a lot of money just for that. So there's so many costs that can be looked at being reduced, and I think a lot of it is council. But Sarah wants to abolish third-tier government, which is councils. So, that will cut the cost of a lot of things if we can manage things at a state level that are necessary, because councils take a lot of funding for silly things sometimes with their meetings, and so I don't know how that's going to play out. That has to be negotiated, obviously, because it's a big thing, but there is ways on reducing that, and I think slowing down immigration so Australians can have first choice at buying. That's something we need to look at.
Yep, no problems at all. For people although I'm asking these questions of every candidate, yes, Angela did not get a chance to sneak in and have a look at somebody else's interview, so she's answering these blind people just to give you a fair appraisal of what's happening. Ambulance ramping. I love this one. People are waiting for hours for ambulances in South Australia. What are your plans to fix ramping, and when should public expect to see real improvement?
As a minor party, when you're just one or two, if I get in and there's a few of us in there, that means we can only do cross checks and negotiate with. We're not going to be a whole party. We're not the opposition. So what can we do as a small party? We have to look at what's all the problem areas and what's happening. There's a lot of, I think we're just over flooded. I think if you take immigration, for instance, as a problem, we've got a lot of immigration and house shortages, and I don't think we have enough people to accommodate everything. I mean, my neighbor next door, he's a veteran. He served in Vietnam, and he's been waiting 6 years for a knee replacement surgery, reconstruction surgery on the public system. So I don't know. I think we've got to negotiate, and with how things are conducted as well. There's a lot of pressures for nurses and nursing staff and the way things are being conducted. So we need more people on, but we need more medical centres. And I think in rural areas, they're not. I lived for a few years ago in Wallaroo in the Yorke Peninsula, and they've only got a couple of public hospitals, but they have no public doctors in the whole Yorke Peninsula. So they have these community buses that go down, I don't know if it's once a week or a couple of times a week, that take people to Adelaide for these appointments. We need to send more people out into country towns and help them out too, so we're not over flooding our city hospitals too. So I think we need to create a policy, and I think that was something that was sort of discussed. I'm not sure the details of it, where the outback and community places can have more public doctors that go out more often, so we can have more space for local GPs. Because when I was living there was a 2-week waiting list for a regular appointment. And that's ridiculous. It changed in 15, 20 years. So.
All right. So 1, I missed a question. 2, you answered the next question in that question. So well done. So I'll just read out. We'll come back to GP in a minute.
Okay.
So housing and rent stress, because you also sort of partially answered this one as well. Rents are skyrocketing across South Australia. Do you accept that state planning decisions and immigration have made rental crises worse? And what would you change immediately?
Well, what I'll change is if you don't have a permanent resident, or if you're not an Australian citizen, you shouldn't be given a long-term rental. I'm sorry, you should have short-term rental agreements, leave the long-term rentals for permanent residents and Australian citizens. That's where I stand on this. I don't know if Fairgo have it in their policy anywhere, but that's how I feel. That's how I stand on this, and I'm fairly certain that they would probably agree on to some level on that. I don't believe in foreign ownership. What I've heard through a number of people is there's a number of houses by foreign owners that are vacant. Why do we have vacant houses owned by people from China or that shouldn't happen. That needs to be looked into as well. So I don't know how to drive. Honestly, I don't know how to drive it down. But I think if we've got too many people, 50 to 100 people going every week to inspections, rental or buying inspections, these places, they just drive up prices because they can get away with it.
Yeah.
So if we got less people, they won't get away with it as much.
Excellent. Okay. Now we'll go back to healthcare, because I mucked that up, people. That's my fault, not Angela's. Many South Australians say they can no longer find bulk billing GPs. Do you accept that this is happening?
I think there's a different threshold with, I think it's changed over the years when it comes to bulk billing. Like when I was in Wallaroo in the Yorke Peninsula years ago, and it's probably about the same or even a bit harder now, I tried to take my kids into the public hospital after hours when they had an ear infection on the weekend or late at night. And because there's no public doctors, the private doctors will bill you unless you actually were admitted into the hospital. So that's the thing. We need more public doctors in certain areas, and that is actually happening. I think it still is. So especially for young families or low-income families that are struggling with those sorts of things, and since COVID, we had a lot of appointments that are happening, not face-to-face anymore. They're happening telehealth and over the phone, which is ridiculous on how these sorts of rules are happening. I mean, once I was sick I actually got pneumonia. It wasn't anything else. It was like that walking pneumonia, and I needed antibiotics. And I had to push to try to do it face-to-face. I said, how can you prescribe me antibiotics? I've never experienced it before. I think this is what I've got. But how can you give me antibiotics for something you don't know I have over the phone? You need to physically check. And I managed to push to get an appointment. But there's so many issues that we need fixed.
Okay. How will you stop regional communities from losing hospitals, services, and local jobs? You sort of already partly explained that in your previous answer. So you got any more to
Yeah,
add?
I think we just need more public doctors to do call outs or to do rotations um, in country towns and those sorts of areas, and that would hopefully take the pressure off of their. That I think that's what we need is to do that. So rather than the community buses going to the city, we need to do it the other way around and rotate more city doctors to go out week at a time or whatever and take the pressure off.
All right.
And give them funding, give them, a bit of somewhere to live, so they can afford to stay there as well. And, even, I don't know what it's like now, but I think even some pharmacies close at a certain time or on the weekends. Once they're shut, it's hard to get medication in some of those country towns as well. So we need to make sure, because it's very hard in the outback and in smaller towns especially.
Okay. And that actually answered the other question was, what would you do differently to fix access to healthcare? So you've answered that for us as well. It must be the way I word these questions. People seem to fall in line. I don't know what's going on here, but still.
The other thing I can add too is, medically, when if they have the right technology, if someone needs an ultrasound or an X-ray, they don't need to be in the city to get that done. It can happen electronically now to send information and for specialists to work. So there's ways that we can use technology in a more efficient way too that should be looked at.
Okay. Yep. Excellent. All right. Crime in suburbs. People in both suburban and regional South Australia feel that they are less safe than they were 5 years ago. Why do you think that is, and what would you change?
This is a big one in Elizabeth. The first day back at Elizabeth Downs, a teenager stabbed another teenager first day back at school. And we're hearing about these sorts of attacks. So this is where I sit with everything, especially in Elizabeth, and how to go about what I think. With serious offenders, because everyone needs to feel safe. I believe, I don't care how old you are, if you're committing a serious crime, you should have an ankle bracelet, and there should be abuse, like the abuse type prevention programs, where it's a court order. If you miss the program, or if you go somewhere you're not supposed to be, then spend a little bit of time in youth detention. You can't miss these programs. But the programs I would like to introduce, and it depends on what the core issues are and what's happening around. If it's drug related, or if it's family violence, or if it's whatever is disrupting the minds of these children, and it's the same reoffenders. I don't believe it's a whole bunch of new ones. I think it's probably more the same sort of groups that are reoffending over and over. That's the problem. And we need to get to the core roots. We can't just give band-aid solutions and not working. So I've spoken to someone called Graham from Teen Challenge. The Teen Challenge is in Strathalbyn. They have a drug rehabilitation centre for young men at the moment, and they have an 80% success rate with this rehabilitation program. But it's more on the basis of them wanting to be rehabilitation. I've heard some of the testimonies. It's incredible. And I've spoken a few times to Graham, how could this work and apply to different problem areas? And because they take a very holistic approach as well, because they're a Christian-based organisation too. They give the young men the skills, life skills. They get them to do stuff on the property, on the farm. They grow their own foods. They do stuff, construct things. So when they leave, they have all these skills. And that's a real good long-term solution. And I've spoken to him about, can we do 10-week programs that are not living on the, centre, but, back to the old-fashioned way of doing these sorts of programs. So, and I've also spoken to community leaders in the area on ways that we can support families and support the children who are committing the crimes, or even if the ones who are just abusing drugs and committing lesser crimes, how can we help them rehabilitate in a more holistic way forward so it lasts longer? Otherwise, for the more serious crimes, we need to crack down, because teachers, teacher aides, and other students and families deserve to feel safe.
Yeah. Okay, so that brings us into our next question. Should repeat youth offenders who commit violent crimes face jail time? Yes or no?
I think they should get an ankle bracelet. It depends on how violent, and we're talking about if they can't be rehabilitated. We can't overwhelm our correctional facilities. Do we trial? It depends on the age and how violent it is. I mean, can we trial them like adults and put them in an adult? No, I think they have to be in the youth detention centre. I think it has to be worked out depending on what age it is. If they are an teenager, maybe they can be trialed. It depends on the crime. I don't know how that's going to work, but I think we need to intervene. We need intervention younger. So I don't think a child just goes from straight to stabbing someone. I think there's early behavioural issues with a child before they get to that point. And when it comes to teens and children with behaviour issues, whatever it is, and I have a different solution to that as well, is with schools, I want to bring in allied health professionals, so cognitive behavioural therapists, psychologists, and speech pathologists, and occupational therapists, to be able to, if they can do their work placement in schools and their continuing profession education in schools, and help out in the classrooms, especially in primary school, they can pick up the early signs of of certain behaviours and help correct those behaviours, and be like the teacher aide as well. And there's also kids that haven't been diagnosed with certain mental health disorders, or with ADHD, or anything that affects their behaviour. Early intervention in preschool or in early childhood can help correct those behaviours before they get to a certain thing, and they'll be able to pick up very quickly if something's going on within their home life. And I like to keep the family unit together, but to support families as well. But I think early intervention is the best. I don't think a child just goes from a normal child to stabbing another child. There's early signs of behaviour, and wow. I think we. Yeah,
yeah.
I have thought about this through.
All right, no problems. All right, we'll keep rolling through. We've got a few more to get through yet. Yeah. Our wonderful South Australian roads are deteriorating, with potholes becoming a real issue. Will you prioritise fixing existing roads before funding new transport projects?
Yeah, well, I think we need to. I mean, if you drive over a pothole, you're going to do damage to your car. So we need safer roads. We need to have our roads nice and smooth. And I would like to see. We need to get them fixed. It's necessary. Obviously the last lot of governments haven't done much to fix our roads. That's been a common theme for I don't know how many years. They haven't fixed our roads properly. So definitely.
Seen a couple of beautiful pictures coming from up the Elizabeth Gawler Way just recently of some of those roads. So understand that. Small business survival. Small businesses are closing under the rising costs and regulations. What will you cut, freeze, or change to keep them operating?
I don't know this. I think we need to get off a globalist agenda and start supporting Australia and Australia businesses and Australia owned. I think it comes more from if we exit the WHO and United Nations, because I think they're the driving force behind supporting the globalist type or bigger companies. I think, we saw this with Drake's Supermarket, I think, in Castle Plaza last year, where they lost their lease to Woolies. So they're giving away, so these big corporations who own shopping malls are giving leases to other big corporations rather than protecting businesses, and that shouldn't be allowed. I would like to look into that, because it seems to be more of a globalist push, and that's more of a federal issue, I think. But I don't know how we can fund and help small businesses. I certainly would encourage people to keep shopping at locally owned and small businesses, keep supporting them. You have to do it as a people and not rely on government.
Okay, excellent. All right, so you're going to love this next one. Teachers say they are burnt out and classrooms are overcrowded. What changes will you make now rather than another review or inquiry?
There's so many problems with classrooms than being overcrowded. They're not overcrowded to when we were at school. Okay, so what's happening is classrooms are set up like dining places, children facing each other as if they're sitting around a dining table rather than facing the front. That's the first problem. So, and also because there's a lot of kids with sensory issues, they're allowed to have fidget toys and stuff like that. So, I think if children were facing the front and weren't sitting in groups or together, unless they have to do group work, one table or two tables in a row, I think you would have less issues. I know that when my kids actually sit during NAPLAN or during test time, they're able to concentrate better because there's no noise, there's no talking. So, and teachers can't, there's no sort of discipline anymore. So I think it's more of and students are not respectful to teachers anymore. They don't listen. They don't, detention isn't detention like it was. And I think we need to put some discipline and respect back in the schools, because students are being very disrespectful. And teachers, on the other hand, there are some teachers who try to be friends with their students. They're not drawing a clear line. I don't know if I'd prefer to go back to the times when teachers used to slam down rulers on the table. We can't do that anymore, but there seems to be lack of discipline as well. And I think they're very limited teachers. I don't think, and we had more students years ago in our classrooms, not less. It's not getting worse now. There's actually, you get 20, 25 kids in a classroom. Years ago, they had over 30. I think it's just the way the classrooms are structured.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. Very good. All right. During COVID, many South Australians were told to take a vaccine or lose their job. Many more were coerced into taking this vaccine and were injured. Do you support compensation for those that were injured and those who refused the vaccine and lost their employment as a result? Yes or no?
Definitely. They shouldn't have, no government should have ever had the right to coerce. No one should have had to cross that bridge. I don't know if whoever's going to form government will actually, go down that road. But they still have the COVID vaccines out there. I mean, that should be removed as well. There's a lot of things that shouldn't be. But with those emergency amendment bill that's out there, we still need to make changes to that. I think we're still far off from all those people receiving compensation until a proper investigation is done. I think proper Royal Commission needs to investigate this, maybe not just on the state level, but on a federal level too. They were giving some sort of compensation for some injuries on a federal level. I don't know how that's happening or how that's going, but government needs to be taken accountable for it. But unfortunately, on a lower seat level, I don't know how much I can do. I think that's more of an upper house, legislative council type thing where they do the investigations and things like that. But I do support it. I think that needs to be looked into, because I think people are still healing from all that, and are still hurting, from that. So I don't know what that would look like, but I do support that.
Okay, excellent. So you've actually touched on this before, but you can probably touch on it again. Melanaskis has introduced even stricter emergency powers that has damaged the public trust in South Australia. Do you agree with them, or would you try and get these laws repealed?
No, we need to abolish that. Those changes made to the emergency amendment bill. That we need to get rid of those because he made them. What we went through in COVID is a lot worse now if they declare another emergency. And what it pretty much says is, if they declare an emergency or whatever, they can take control of your property and do whatever they like, pretty much. And no, that that's an overreach. That's a big overreach. So do not support that at all.
Okay. All right. Getting close to the end, so you can sort of start relaxing now a bit, Angela. Listening to locals. If your local community overwhelmingly opposes a government decision, will you vote against your party to represent them, yes or no?
Yes, I will vote. I will do what I agree with. I'll just turn that off. Sorry. If I believe in something that I need to do and stand for the people who elect me, as long as I agree with it and I'm aligned with it, of course. But I mean, Sarah knows that I will stand for the things that I'm aligned with, and she won't restrict me in any way. We've had this sort of conversation, and I made that clear that if I truly believe something, I will stand for that, even if I stand alone.
Okay, excellent. All right. What is the one decision by the current South Australian government that you believe has made life harder for ordinary South Australians?
I don't know if you can narrow it down to one thing. I think there's a lot of things that they've done. I think they've made too many things that have contributed to a whole problem of stuff. I don't know, and then they don't admit to anything that they've done wrong. So I think the whole government is. I think we just need to get rid of the current government and just not get. Yeah, you know what? I don't have a straightforward answer on that. We've got too many issues that this current government and previous ones have built upon and changed over the years, and they're making it worse and worse. The problem is our state, federal, local government, and our committees and boards. And our committees and boards are funded, government funded. I think it's about $8 million in South Australia is government funded, and the other $4 million is not government funded. But the ones that take advice, they all take advice from the World Health Organization and United Nations. And I found that even with the libraries and the library boards, they take advice from UNESCO. And so if we're taking advice from international bodies, they're not really making their own decisions. So we need to fundamentally exit the WHO, exit the United Nations, stop taking advice from these international lunatics, and make our own decisions.
Excellent. Okay, so we're at the very last bit now. I believe we were talking before, and you were just expressing that if people wish to assist you, that the best way to contact you would be by your email.
Yes. So, I don't know if you can put that in the comments or anything like that when you post it.
I can do that. I was thinking I haven't done that for anybody else, but I should go back and add that to each candidate's content.
I had to ask. Yeah, that would be fantastic. Look, if anyone supports who I am and would like to help me, I'm in the electorate of Elizabeth, I would appreciate any hands-on boots on the ground, especially for polling day. Reach out to me, Angela, Angela, Rojas, Rojas, for fairgoforaus, for Oz, at gmail.com. I would love to have some volunteers, extra volunteers. Also, I will mention this very quickly before I go. I've been out and about campaigning, and Elizabeth City Shopping Mall, I try to write to them, I email them to get their permission to campaign in the mall, and they sent me an email pretty much saying that they don't allow anyone besides endorsed major parties. So we went outside the mall, myself and another volunteer, and it took 5 minutes before security came down and asked us to leave. And I showed them that, look, I am an endorsed candidate. I showed them that, showed them the email. He was a bit surprised that the mall's response and email, we weren't allowed outside the mall or even in the car park with any posters. So we're allowed to walk through the mall, not allowed to give out any branding or talk to. We were allowed to walk through the mall, maybe talk to people, but not stand around or anything like that. But they pretty much asked us to leave. So, and then a similar response with Manapara Shopping Centre over the phone. They pretty much said that they don't allow political parties. I said, well, you've had the Labor guy there, and they said, well, that's because he has his office, he's a tenant in the building. Well, you know what? That's a bit biased and undemocratic. So that's how the majors want to play.
I can understand the office in the building. That was actually a fairly reasonable excuse, but I thought there were actually laws about interfering with elections, but anyway.
Well, the shopping malls apparently are privately owned, allowed public access, so that's how they try to get away with it. So.
Okay. Right. So your last call. Why would voters choose you as their representative? This is your chance to do your spill and win all these people over. Go for it, Angela.
Well, you know, when I stick my mind to something, I follow through. I followed through with the libraries board, and I followed through with the school curriculum stuff until I get my breakthroughs. So when I put my heart into something, I give it everything, and I commit 100%. If I can't commit to something, I'll be open and honest, and I would do that. But I am for the people. I'm not a career politician. So if you've liked everything I've spoken about and agree with some of my viewpoints on what I represent, then vote for me for Elizabeth.
Excellent. Anything else you'd like to add before we go?
Look, when people vote properly, look at all the candidates and vote for who you align with. Don't go around doing these donkey votes, or don't go around drawing, these dick pics on these and everything like that, because they won't be counted. Find a candidate that you support and get behind them. That's all I'm going to say. If you want to get behind me, I'd love to have the support. But if you want to make changes, you're going to have to be a bit active.
Okay.
That's all I want to say. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Angela, for interview today. I did throw it on you last minute, and you were kind enough to respond. So I wish you the best of luck, and we shall be posting this, and I will. There you go. And I will try and put that massive long email address down the bottom when I post it. So from Real Talk with Vince, we'll have yet another candidate for Elizabeth. So that's 2 for Elizabeth people now that can watch. All right. Thank you, Angela.
So much. Thank you so much.